they have to trade one of the guards.
Let's go back to Dejounte Murray again. It
Yeah.
seemed like there just wasn't a team out there that was willing to give them enough at the deadline. Trae Young is also, of course, on this list, and the Hawks got the number 1 pick. So how does that all I mean, we can talk about what you would accept for those guys if you're Atlanta, which one of those guys you would prefer to trade, how getting the number 1 pick affects all of this analysis.
Well, ironically for the Hawks, the way the number 1 pick affects the analysis is they're definitely in the tax unless they do something, which means they actually have to do something for the first time ever, or at least since they traded John Collins.
Oh no, they dumped somebody. Hey, I mean that they'll just do that again, right? Yeah.
I think it's actually possible. Oh no, they'd end up a guy short. Never mind. It looked for a second like the math was possible, where they could end up $1,000 below the tax if they traded AJ Griffin, but that's not going to be how it works because they have to get to 14 again. But anyway, the other thing is getting the number 1 pick in Atlanta. I think if you think they're going to take Alex Sarr, then Clint Capela becomes a very highly likely trade candidate with an expiring $22 million deal.
Yeah. But is there? Yeah.
That said, like, I do think there are Capela deals that make sense. Like, if you're New Orleans, you can't find anything else. Like, yeah, sure, Capela for a year. Like, yeah, we can do that.
Well, but what's the matching salary? I hate the Capela Zion fit, by the way.
Yeah, that's suboptimal. That's yeah.
I might even rather just bring back Valanciunas for a year than do that.
Yeah. Okay. You might have me there. What if the Knicks lose Hartenstein?
God, yeah. I mean, that's like to go get Capela. Yeah. I mean, I wonder what would they trade Josh Hart for him? I don't know what the matching salary. I think we're putting the cart before the horse here, though. I think because it all goes back to the guards first, and then what happens with them is going to inform everything else, and maybe even Capela is like part of that trade.
Yeah,
but I agree. I mean, he's an obvious cut candidate. He's not. That's not going to change the direction of their franchise. So I think you got to kind of start with one of the guards.
I think they have to trade one of the guards. I think getting the number 1 pick is their license to trade Trae Young.
Yeah, because now it's a new face of the franchise.
Yeah, exactly. And
at least until they realize that there's only role players available in the top 5 of this draft.
Shh.
Yeah, but you could dine out on that for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's in a tough spot again because they owe their next 3 drafts to the Spurs from the Murray trade.
Right.
But the fact is, they're doing a dance with the luxury tax as long as they have Trae's at this number. Dejounte's contract is much more manageable. It runs a year longer, or actually basically runs 2 years longer because Trae can opt out in 2 years. So you could say, oh, we're keeping Trae. We're going to keep building around Trae. But then Trae can decide he doesn't want to be a part of it anyway. Whereas Dejounte, you're a little more locked in. So
yeah, Dejounte, by the way, only goes 1 more year because he's got a player option too. So that's I mean, who has more trade value? I mean, maybe that's just you trade whoever has more trade value. Maybe that's where it ends up.
I think they found out last spring that the answer wasn't Dejounte. I think.
Well, is that just because nobody had anything to trade, right? Like the Lakers had 1 pick to trade then, and now they have 3.
That's true. If the Lakers came to them and said we prefer Dejounte to Trae, then I think they'd be very, very open-minded about that. So that part is true. I just didn't get the sense that. Yeah, I mean the Laker variable could be the one thing. I mean, nobody else was making that offer certainly. Now with Trae, it's interesting. I mean, you hear about the Lakers, you hear about the Spurs. I don't love the fit in San Antonio. I'm not sure what the Spurs would actually get. They give them their picks back, I guess, and sort of give them back their lease on life. But if I'm the Spurs, I'd probably rather hang on to those.
Yeah, I think so, because it's just like it has such a high upside with them being unprotected and the Hawks, looking like, I mean, a team that's not even at their best is going to be around the fringes of the playoff race. And so, like, hey, you could, I mean, it was unlucky maybe for San Antonio that the Hawks bumped up this year, and very lucky for the Hawks that this is the year that they went from the 10th seed or whatever to number one. Yeah, I mean, as far as like candidates for Murray and Trae, like, all right, San Antonio, sure. If the price is low enough, I'll take Trae. But I mean, if it's two first rounders and only one of them is good, right? Like, I don't think that Atlanta needs like more picks in this draft necessarily. But if it was like, okay, number 4 this year, and another kind of flotsamy pick in the future, yeah, okay, I would probably do that because it's. But I don't. What I don't want to do if I'm San Antonio is make this is the biggest take the biggest swing that I'm going to have to take in the Wemby era on Trae Young. I would rather just see
Yeah.
what's behind door number 2. If you can just get him for a relative song, because eventually you'll have to pay him again too. If it's kind of like you pay a price for him where you're like, okay, it's worth getting him for just the remainder of his contract, but even if we don't end up paying him his next contract, we feel okay about the trade. That's kind of the price I'm willing to pay for Trae.
If you're the Spurs, would you give up the 8th pick to bring back Murray?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like they have to do something at point guard. You would think. I mean, next year's draft is fantastic. I don't know how much better they want to be. The West is going to be brutal, but I mean, they're still going to win games. There's still the East still does exist.
And I think
Um,
Victor's just going to be good enough that they're just not going to be able. Victor will be good enough that they won't be able to be bad enough.
yeah, I mean, you also just think about it too. If you could get, I would rather, I think, give up the 8th pick this year for Murray than one of the Hawks' own picks. That's what they'll be asking for. But especially if you take that guy away and you're not going to send back a player of note, so you're actually probably helping your own lottery on the Hawks' future by taking him away if you don't send back like a good player who can help them. I mean, that's the thing though. The Hawks are probably going to be like, oh yeah, we don't have our pick the next 3 years. Like we want to trade this Murray for a guy who can help us now, and the Spurs can't really do that. And same probably with Trae. So I think a team like the Lakers with Reeves and Hachimura would probably help them okay,
Yeah,
and maybe also give them some salary relief. Like I think that like so many of these teams, that's the thing, right? Like we just talked about with the Cavs. Like they're going to be trying to move guys. New Orleans is another one, right? Like they're going to try to make a move, maybe with Ingram, who we'll talk about, I'm sure. It's like okay, like that's not how trades work in the NBA. Usually, you're trading like all these teams are trying to be good.
yeah.
So like you can't trade for future assets, and the teams that again have the commitment to kind of go into more of a rebuild are going to be in much better shape over these next couple of years. But of course, it doesn't matter for the Hawks. They traded away their ability to rebuild when they acquired Murray.
If you were the Hawks, if you could only get one unprotected pick from the Lakers rather than two, but if you could get like Reeves, Hachimura, and whatever salary match, along with the Lakers pick this year at 17, and one unprotected pick, either 29 or 31, is that something you would do?
Well, if I'm the Hawks or if I'm Landry Fields.
Yeah.
Right? Like Landry Fields trading for an unprotected 2029 and 2031 pick is not really gonna like it's probably not gonna save your job, right? Like you need to like show progress or whatever. I mean, if I'm the Hawks, I'm just saying, hey, you know what? I realize that the rest of this is bad, but I'm like we're uh, for the next 3 years we're in trouble, but like that's a sunk cost. So I like this group is not winning a championship. It's not going to like no matter what we do, we're not going to be like threatening for a top 4 seed. That's kind of my approach is if I don't see a pathway for the current group to contend for a top 4 seed, you blow it up. That's how I feel about them. But there are a lot of, as I like to call it, the Karnišovas principle. The Karnišovas corollary. We'll call it that. Get some semi-alliteration there.
The Hawks.
You can write corollary with a K.
The scenario you cannot rule out is that they make all kinds of calls and end up running it back with the same team. And even
like I said, right? Like, well, so let's try to be a little more structured here on all these guys. What's your price for moving these guys?
I do think on Trae, especially if you're not getting expiring money back, which the Lakers can't really give them, I do think you have to get 3 first-round picks. I think Dejounte, you can lower the bar a little more. I know they played almost as well with Dejounte when Trae was out late in the year, but that's March basketball. There's a lot of shit games in there. It's just different.
Yeah. The idea that Dejounte is better than Trae, I don't subscribe to.
Yeah. It's more, would you rather have Dejounte at $25 million than Trae at $43 million? And would you rather have Dejounte?
Well, and Dejounte's a better complementary player too, right? Like Trae is just like he Traeizes the game on both ends.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Traeses it. But yeah, I mean, I think I probably, because there's also the possibility, like Trae didn't have a great year this year. He hasn't really improved over the last 2-3 years, I would say. His overall perception in the game has gone down. There's a thought that he could be the best player in a conference finals team. I think that's not really true unless it's 2021. He's 26 right now. Contract is getting longer. Like there is a little bit of an option of a feeling that like, yeah, okay, he didn't have a great year, but there's also a possibility you just won't be able to trade him for anything after this. So maybe you just put them both on the market, and whichever one gives you get a better offer for, you trade for that guy. I mean, I would trade them both, honestly.
I think
not worry about being good the next 3 years. I think they're both at probably the max trade value they'll be. So I would just move them. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, 2 first-round picks that have some upside. I mean, that's probably about it, and maybe slightly higher for Trae.